There is no such thing as a vegan athlete. You see a lot of people that say, hey, I'm a vegan and I'm an athlete. Let me explain why there's no such thing as a vegan athlete. But first, I want to go into a little bit. There's been a number of notable high-profile athletes that have tried to go on a plant-based diet or quote-unquote a vegan diet. One memorable one is quarterback for the Tennessee Titans, Cam Newton, who famously saw his career fall apart. He had injury after injury, couldn't recover from that, and basically is now out of the league. Canelo Alvarez is a world champion, world-class boxer who famously said, I'm going vegan for a recent fight. And what happened during that fight? Well, he lost. And that probably a lot of that had to do with veganism. We've seen this time and time again. Athletes go vegan to virtue sig a little bit, perhaps their health gets a little bit better because maybe they were eating junk food before. And then what we see is over a period of 6 months to 18 months, they start to steadily spiral down south. And, some of them don't, sometimes they cheat, some of them they call it vegan, but actually they're eating fish and eggs and things like that. And oftentimes, those that are not in the very truly taxing sports, the non-contact sports, if you're in mixed martial arts or football or something like that, you don't last very long. And I know people will say, well, Nate Diaz is a vegan. No, he's not actually a vegan. He said he's admitted many times he'll eat fish and things like that. People will say, well, they'll point to the tennis player Novak Djokovic and say, hey, well, he's a vegan. No, he's not a vegan either. He tried it back in 2016, saw his performance tank, and now he eats a lot of plants, but he also eats meat. Same thing with Tom Brady. People say, well, Tom Brady's a vegan. No, he's not a vegan. He eats 20% of his diet comes from actual meat and eggs and fish and things like that, which is actually more than the average American, believe it or not. The average American eats less than 20% of their diet coming from meat, fish, and eggs. They actually include animal products, but most of it's dairy in that case. But what do I talk about? There's no such thing as a vegan athlete. Well, let's think about that. Now, people will be, saying, well, I can get just the right amount of protein from a vegan diet as I can from an animal diet. And there's some truth to that. In fact, recent studies have suggested that if you take isolates from corn and wheat and soy, and you mix them together in the right ratio, and you isolate that, you can get an equivalent effective protein when it comes to muscle protein synthesis. So it's possible. Now, that also doesn't take into account all the other nutrients that you get from animal products that also have a role, an ergogenic role. Just like dietary cholesterol actually has an ergogenic role. But let's just discount the fact that you're eating highly, highly processed food to do that. Remember, often we'll see vegans and their health will start to go worse. Although they'll finally eventually can see, well, maybe it's not the best diet for health, but it's about the animals. It's about doing the least harm to animals, right? And so if you look at an athlete, I don't care what kind of athlete they are, I consider myself an athlete and I know this very well. I eat and I require more food than a non-athlete would. I probably twice as much. Easily. And most of these people that are athletes, they require more food than the average person. And what happens with more food? Well, it's undeniable. The more food you eat, the more animals get killed. There's no escaping that fact, right? You cannot be a vegan and be an athlete. It's impossible because you've got to eat more food. And because you're eating more food, guess what? More animals are dying. I don't care what your diet is. Animals are dying. Particularly if you're using all these pea protein and wheat and corn, soy blend isolates, guess where that's all coming from? That's 100% coming from highly industrialized monocrop agriculture, which is killing literally billions and trillions and even quadrillions of creatures if you include insects. There's studies that show in the United States alone, 4 quadrillion with a Q, insects are killed every year in the harvest of crop food, due to pesticides. It's not to mention the downstream effect on all the birds that depend on them for food. All these, you're wiping out entire ecosystems to do this. And so again, if you have to eat more calories, which you almost 100% absolutely equally, there's no exception to this. All athletes require more food than non-athletes. That's just the way it is. So there's no such thing as a vegan athlete as by the definitions of veganism. You might want to say you're plant-based. Okay, that's fine, but you're not a vegan athlete. Okay, so let's just put that sort of thing to rest. You are plant-based. You're posing perhaps as a vegan, based on the ethical ideology that so many vegans like to trot out there, when they virtue signal about how they're doing the least harm to animals, which is total bullshit anyway. If you wanted to do the least harm to animals, you would eat purely regeneratively raised large game animals, cows particularly. That is how you kill the least animals. I don't care. There's no arguing about that. We know that literally trillions of animals die in the production of all crops, any kind. It doesn't matter if it's strawberries or wheat or watermelon or tomatoes. Tons and tons of animals are being shot, electrocuted, blown up, poisoned, intentionally, not unintentional. There may be some unintentional in crop harvest, but I guarantee when they go on, they decimate the entire landscape to plant that monocrop. All these animals are dying. When they throw pesticides on or kill all the bugs, all the birds that would normally feed on them are also starving to death. So that maybe is not the nicest thing. Anyway, so no such thing as a vegan athlete. Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and then like and do all that stuff. Anyway, you guys take care. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.